Hey everybody, it's Robert Gowan. Welcome to Mentors4mil Military. Another episode here. We're at the beautiful Pearl and Pine Brewery inside Sonoya, Georgia, which was founded by an 82nd Airborne veteran. And he's now part owner of this and head brewer. And we're very pleased and honored to be here. And I'm joined by the host.
How are you guys? I'm Kyle.
So today we've got an episode that this is like unusual. I don't know that we've ever had.
This is off the grid for us.
Yeah, definitely. So first off, Kurt, thank you so much for coming all this way from Houston, Texas.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Now, so we have a mutual friend and somebody that we both know. I've known Zeke now, I'm trying to think of it, since maybe he was about 4 years old, I think, or 5 years old.
You got me beat.
So a long time.
You got me beat. Just met Zeke in college, so not too long ago.
Yeah.
04.
Well, he spent a long time in college. I think he spent...
That's true. That's true. I think I caught him on his first senior trip.
Okay.
So I don't know how, maybe one or two more after that.
So not the 11 years prior to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Gotcha. And when we talked to him about that, he took the long route. Well, I forget what his saying is about that. We'll have to ask him about that. I'm sure he'll listen to this episode and
That's
call
right.
me up.
I'm sure.
But anyway, thank you so much for joining us and coming all this way.
My pleasure.
So you have a very unique background, and you were in the Air Force. So let's first start off. Why did you even join the military? What was so intriguing?
Why did I join the military? You know, I thought about this, kind of thinking through questions you were going to ask, and I had a grandfather who was in World War II. I don't think he was in combat or anything like that. My father was in the Air Force, and he's a bit older than me, or older than the rest of my friends my age, as parents were. And he kind of filled my childhood with stories of the military, a lot of American patriotism and nostalgia. So for me, it was something that I felt like I wanted to do, but I didn't really have a path. I grew up in a really small town in central Illinois, out in a cornfield, and I honestly don't know to this day if I knew many people who went into the military. We had the recruiters would come in at lunchtime, and everybody would look at them like, no, you're not dumb enough to talk to that Marine recruiter, are you? You know, and then I had my dad in the background saying, no, you don't need to go in the Marines, and so. Fast forward a couple years through high school, I was waking up on 9/11, and my mom called me. I was probably in a bit of a haze because it was in a fraternity house back in Illinois before I went to school with our friend. And she said, you know, hey, turn on the TV. Are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. What's going on? You know, and then I don't need to rehash the story of that day for everybody, but ironically, I had started taking an Army ROTC class at Illinois State, and it was just, I mean, the irony of that, because it was really just for me to explore, you know, a military career, get a little more information. It was one of those electives that you take or whatever, and they had taken me on a couple Army trips, camping and stuff like that. In my head, I'm saying, this is not me. I need to find a different branch. I don't like sleeping with the snakes. So when 9/11 happened, it was really for me just a moment where I felt like, you know, duty calls, and I got to figure this out. I got to figure out how I need to do what I want to do. And that was really the moment where I decided to go into the Air Force, and I found a detachment down in Texas that I felt like was good for me because they had a big system down there and pumped out a lot of officers.
Was this a National Guard at the time?
No, it was another school down there, Southwest Texas State, which is now Texas State. Detachment 840 is like one of the biggest ROTC detachments. So I went down there, talked to them. They gave me sort of like a partial scholarship or whatever to come down there and finish out 2 years of school and then commission.
What was your major at that time frame?
I think I was a pre-law major. I was taking a bunch of political science and criminal justice classes down there.
Okay.
I had a pretty general degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not specialized.
So when you graduated from college, that's when
Yeah.
you got your full commission. You go off to like OCS or something of that nature, or how did that work?
Yeah, so you go to field training before your last year in ROTC. I went to field training in San Antonio at Lackland Air Force Base. It's where they do all the boot camps for enlisted as well in July. So anybody who's been in San Antonio in July knows it's hot.
It's hot.
It's hot, yeah. So finished that in 2004. I commissioned in 2004 in December and reported to my first duty station January 3rd, 2005.
So what were you commissioned as?
Second lieutenant.
No, I mean in what branch? Like, did you select the branch?
Yeah, Air Force.
Yeah.
It was an Air Force ROTC program down there. So I knew when I went down there I was going in the Air Force. Wanted to fly a plane.
Okay.
And you know, as you know, previous guests were talking about the military had different plans for me. So, yeah.
So what was the military occupational specialty or the branch?
So-
That's what, yeah, that you were commissioned into.
I was commissioned into the United States Air Force.
Oh no, I mean
in
like
the
what
Army, we have
MOS?
branches like
I'm sorry.
infantry,
Oh, gotcha.
armor.
We're speaking a different
Oh,
language.
we are
Artillery.
speaking a different language,
So
man.
you said you
I'm
were-
like, I was in the Air Force.
Yeah, no. For officers, it's always you're branched to something
your
like
branch, your
infantry
commo
or.
head,
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, different.
Yeah, so you basically get selected for your job when you're still in school. So
Okay.
I want to say like, I don't know, the summer of 2004, something like that, I was selected as a 13 Sierra missile operator, ICBM operator. And that's kind of the beginning of.
What'd you think of that when you were selected as it?
I remember this like it was yesterday. I really wanted to fly planes, and back then I actually wanted to fly because I thought it would be cool, not because I loved flying or anything like that. I just really always thought it would be cool to fly. So I didn't have, you know, I was underprepared and things like that. But I don't know if it was the day of, but I can tell you I was driving down the back roads of Central Texas, talking to my mom, driving my little S10 pickup, and I was crying, man. I was devastated because I had, you know, when I got into the Air Force, I was going in sort of like, you know, out of duty, and I never intended to make it a career. I just wanted to serve, and I felt called to do that after 9/11. But man, I was devastated when I got the news because it was nothing that I wanted to do. I just felt like the path that I wanted was taken away from me, and
Your call to duty was wasted. At
was
some point.
sort of like, you know, almost a lot of personal failure is what I felt. Like what did I do wrong? You know, I had tried to do so much to sort of be at the top of the list, you know, in the detachment before you get those assignments, and didn't get it.
Did you ever figure out how it is that they make those selections and why this occurred? I mean,
the $1 million question. I think if anybody's been in the Air Force that's listening, they're going to say there is no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things you can do, but the reality is it's like, you know, they open the floodgates and then they close the floodgates. And I want to say the year that I was up for the pilot board, they just didn't select many. And, you know, I wasn't as close to the top as maybe I could have been or needed to be to get one of those slots.
it's so interesting to us. I mean, especially on the enlisted side of the house for the Army, we're guaranteed whatever job it is we want. And for those who are listening or watching, is in terms of recruiting, this is a key takeaway that none of the other branches guarantee.
That's the reason I joined the Army.
It is. I mean, and it's the reason why in recruiting it was like, well, you can go over there and figure out and play roulette with what you're going to do, or you can come to the Army. And I'm going to tell you that if that's what you want, I'm going to guarantee it in the contract.
Yeah, ROTC Air Force is roulette. That's a great way to say it. It is roulette.
Yeah.
You have no idea and really no control over what you're going to do.
So, I mean, I guess you were flying something. It was like a 20,000 ton missile, you know?
Yeah, you want to be a pilot? How about
That's right. That's right. Oh, you like being high altitudes?
Yeah.
Let's put you underground, like 60 feet underground. Yeah, that was.
So when you left, college and you got commissioned, I mean, where is the training for this? I mean, how do you? And maybe you're not allowed to tell, but I mean, it's more like, what kind of training goes into this type of thing that may be perhaps why you were selected?
I have no idea why I was selected. They say that
I'm trying to help you out here.
I know you are. You're throwing me a bone, but they say the reason you're selected is because, you did well and you wanted to be in operations, right? And so if you want to be in ops, they'll flag you for an ops role, right? Everybody starts out post commission at Air and Space Basic Course in Montgomery, Alabama at Maxwell Air Force Base.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So you spend, I don't know how long we were there, maybe a month and a half.
Yeah.
And then my technical training was out at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is sort of like Central California. It's really, really nice. Not that there's anything near the Air Force Base, but the general area is really cool. And that's where they do test launches. I mean, you can watch those. I
had no idea.
Yeah, they do test launches of our ICBMs and a lot of satellites, and there's different commercial companies, I'm sure, that are launching off of there.
Is Elon out there?
He's in Texas now.
That's right, because he left the whole state of Texas.
That's right. He's in Boca Chica.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Did you tee
got
that
good
up for a
taste.
reason or something?
I was
good
just wondering,
taste.
man. He's like, you can go out there and look, and there's other private entities out there. I'm thinking,
That's right.
Virgin or whatever. Everybody's out there shooting off there.
Now, most of the companies, big companies, through some of the recent changes and stuff, decided to leave Texas, and I think California.
Or Texas, yeah.
For Texas, and they went to Texas because of taxes and everything else. So anyway, so you leave your training, you're out in Cali, and did you get a chance to at least select your first duty assignment location?
Absolutely not. No. So you're in training out in Vandenberg. You're with a big class, and the way they kind of do it is, sort of like half of you are going to end up going into sort of more of the satellite, space command stuff, and the other folks are going to go into missiles. And so I already had a missile spot out of school, so I mean everybody knows kind of where they're going, but you're training with those folks at the beginning, sort of the beginning stages, I guess, of tech training, and then towards the end of that, you sort of graduate through weapon systems and then emergency war order procedures and stuff like that out there. It's
I'm out right there. Okay, emergency war.
Well, we're gonna get in there. Wait, let's go.
and then towards the end, they kind of have like the assignment drops, right? And that was when I got stationed in Minot, North Dakota.
Was there anybody else living out in that location? Because that's
so. I mean, very few people go to Minot, North Dakota, unless they have to.
I've been.
Have you really?
I've been. Well, Portal, North Dakota's on the way, and that's where I crossed over to go to Alaska when I went to Canada.
Oh, cool.
I drove through Minot, and I was like,
I forgot that you drove.
There's an Air Force base around here?
Yeah.
Is it underground? Like where?
There's an Air Force base and a lot of nuclear weapons out in that area. So got my assignment, went out there. And the silver lining, and this is I bet everybody has a story like this. I ended up going out there with one of my best friends from ROTC, who we kept getting almost like paired together the whole way. He actually just retired as a lieutenant colonel, maybe a month or two ago. And another really close friend of mine. The three of us got stationed together in missiles in Minot, North Dakota. So
when you say station in missiles, before I get too ahead of what that, like, hey, time out, let's get into this deeper and stuff. What the hell does that mean? I mean, like, when you talk about the training and everything else, are you literally like going through the training to understand the ballistics, the understanding of the missile itself, how to detonate and launch, and I mean, is it?
Yeah. So mostly it's just a lot of, it's sort of, you're operating a weapon system. So maybe it's similar to somebody that is, a Wizzo in a F-15 or something like that. That's the closest comparison, I would say.
So it's not just pushing a button,
no.
like show on TV. You flip the little switch and you push the button.
There was a key, and another guy has a key, and you all turn them at the same time.
That's like half of it, but the other half is maintaining operational capability, right? Because we want to have these missiles ready all the time. So part of your job is to make sure that the sites are secured. The two halves of it are broken up kind of in the emergency war order procedures, and then, or the emergency action message procedures, whatever you want to call it, the super top secret stuff, and then just the weapon system. Here's how to fix a problem, and here's what you do when you get an alarm for security and things like that.
I would imagine that the bulk of it is just rehearsal.
It is.
And make it muscle memory, make it to where you can't forget what to do.
Yep.
That way, if it comes at 2:30 in the morning and something's got to happen, you got to make it work, right?
That's exactly right.
And is it just inducing failures at each phase of operations and seeing how you guys are going to react? And then is it a team environment as well?
It is. It's a team environment. You have a crew partner, because in the real world you're in a capsule with another crew commander or a deputy crew commander, depending on where you're sitting.
It's hilarious watching this fly.
All right, so deputy commander's in the seat next to you, or deputy
commander, deputy commander,
okay.
Right and left seat.
Okay.
Similar to, I guess, pilots, and it's cool.
Is this
the closest reference I can make to being a pilot?
Is this like okay, so that are probably in your head as well is the vision that they show in Hollywood of, it's dark. You're underground. You're sitting there with all these visual controls in front of you, and like Kyle said, you each have a key. Maybe it's in a safe. You first got to enter the code. You got these sequences. I mean, like, are they making a big ordeal out of this, or is it seriously that is part of the protocol, is to ensure the reason why you have a left and a right is that two people have to make decisions about the information that's coming in to determine whether or not it's legit.
Yeah, it's all about redundancy, right? And it doesn't even stop there. It goes beyond just the two people and into sort of what's necessary for an ICBM to launch. So, we're safe. I'll just put it that way. There's a lot of redundancy. So,
is there ever, and you don't have to answer this if you can't, but is part of that to really ensure too that the protocols that have been put in place are secure enough in a way in which the command that's coming in, the incoming command, especially let's go ahead and bring it up, artificial intelligence and all those types of things, is the idea and the intent, hey, let's make sure this is coming from the right location. It's encrypted. I mean, we do this out in the field and stuff. You've got to make sure. Stuff. Okay, so it's the same type of thing. We're making sure it's been properly coded and we're getting the right information. You said this is how I interpret it. I'm going to say this back. Do we receive both? And, are we in sync here? So very similar type of thing.
Very similar stuff. as that.
Very comforting to those of us who don't know anything about what you're talking
So
about.
it's like at any point you feel like there's
It's not just a dude sitting alone in his pajamas,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, yeah, it could very well have been that. You
so
know,
like at any point
We did wear pajamas, but you know.
if you guys feel like a chink in the armor, do you have like capability to say nope, this isn't happening? Bam.
Yes,
Like,
of course,
I think
yeah.
that level of
Yeah.
that level of trust in the two people in
Right.
left seat, right seat.
Right.
You have to have the ability to say no.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you have the ability. You're almost like a vote,
Yes.
right? So you have the ability to not vote.
who is typically in charge? Like what level? Like is it like a 05 billet or 06 billet?
It'll typically be like in a capsule. It'll typically between the two, the commander, deputy commander. It'll typically be an 02.
Okay.
So I was
Wow.
I was a commander before I got out, and my rank was a first lieutenant. So, yeah, young,
yeah.
very young. Looking back, it's almost scary.
I don't know if first lieutenants are created equal then.
No. So I would say you were very special
Yeah.
by that part,
yeah.
and why you were selected because
My wife calls me special, so I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
That's not what I meant, Kurt. No, what I was thinking is more. There must have been some kind of. There must have been something there. I
Right.
was going to say intelligence, and that's actually probably
That's
more of a
what I
slap.
was- who's gonna say
slap
that?
in the
Kyle
face.
tried to say that earlier, but
Dude, he's got like a 184 IQ. Or
not at all.
something. Like,
Not at all.
So I was going to ask that. So
I
is there
know.
any prerequisite or
You
something?
know, that is, Kyle was asking this earlier about, like implying that I'm some kind of genius, but the reality is I was actually in there as just I felt like just a normal kid. I didn't get like straight A's or anything like that. And a lot of the guys that were in this field were like aerospace engineers and out of like really good schools. So I mean, these guys are like rocket scientists.
Yeah.
And
That's what I would have thought.
I was in their class. It was, for me, I was like, I've never taken an engineering course ever. Like, I do not belong here.
There has to be a discriminator.
Yeah.
Though for the person, and it might not be
Man.
nuts and bolts. It might be personality.
You know what it was? He was the attorney that was going to look at this from a very analytical, legal
Yes,
standpoint.
that's what I'm thinking.
Man, it's like anything else. You work hard, you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. It was ironic in a way because I felt like I surrounded myself with people that were way smarter than me. And that's been one of my things in life that I felt like has made me maybe a little different on the outcome side,
I would say you're different, Kurt, just in the fact that there's not very many of us who've had the ability to launch an ICBM.
Yeah, definitely. There's not many. I've never met like
I shot a tow missile once. That was
another.
pretty cool.
I've never, outside of the folks that I was in with doing that job, I don't know if I've ever met another missileer in the wild. So there's just not many. There's a finite number of missiles. There's a finite number of people that are going to go through that program. So just basic math doesn't.
So how long did you end up staying in North Dakota?
I was there until August 15th, 2007.
Okay.
I got out. I actually voluntarily separated. I can't remember exactly what was happening at the time, but they were doing a reduction in force in the Air Force, and our career field at the time was considered critically manned, which meant no one was going to get out. But then all of a sudden we had heard about some people that were like essentially getting separated against their will. And so there was a few of us that were like, well, we sort of started doing this for 9/11. We've done this for a couple years. We've got like a little time left, but we're not going to make this a career. So I'm just going to like raise my hand and see what happens, because if my career were to get ruined, that's totally fine. That's not for me. and then we felt like that's better than somebody who actually went in and wanted to make this a career, getting randomly, getting their head chopped. So
Is this like, is it a long-term career then? I mean, is it like, can you go to 05 billet, 06 billet in this field?
Yeah, I mean, so since then, they created I was in the Space Command, and since then there's they created the Space Force. So I was like the part of that Space Command before it broke up.
Yeah, when they did the breakup, by the way, there have been some individuals that's gone through the Ranger School down at Fort Moore now, not Fort Benning. So we really do have Space Rangers out there now. So I didn't know if you were aware of that.
No, I've only seen the weird uniforms that they wear in the Space Force.
It is kind of weird. It's a little bit
weird, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback to Star Wars and all that.
It's definitely
Star Trek, maybe.
Yeah, Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very, very odd. So they've also make, I guess, a satire out there. I don't know if it's Netflix or Max or one of those that created a satire about. Have you not seen it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you'd probably love it.
Okay.
Because of all the craziness and stuff that goes along with it. It's totally meant to be, a farce. So, all right. So when was it and how long did you totally stay and you made the transition?
Yeah, so I made the transition in, my last day active duty was August 15th, 2007. I was in Minot, North Dakota, just telling myself, I got to just get out of here. I got to find a way out of here. So I started working with a military to civilian recruiter, and got hired for a consulting job in DC, which was interesting.
Well, but it was probably more of a good transition for in a way, right? Because of the strategic.
You would think so. I had a really, really high specialized clearance. Everybody does that has that job. You have it's called like a top secret Cat 6 ESI or something like that. It's a very specific top secret clearance. And I think a lot of those government contractors in DC will just kind of pluck these military officers because of that. That's how I rationalize it, at least, because I had no business. Like, I had this super technical, specific job that obviously translates into nothing outside the silo.
You don't have an
outside
ICBM?
the missile silo, right? I packed up and moved to Washington, D.C. in 2007.
It's a hell of a time to move to DC too.
It was just before it was really election season.
Yeah.
I was put onto a project at the FBI, so I would go into work every day and go to the J. Edgar Hoover building, which was wild. I mean, it was like a finance department, again, something that I'm horribly unqualified to kind of be around, but I would walk into the J. Edgar Hoover building every day, and that's where I'm working. That's what I'm doing.
Cool.
It was wild.
No, it had to be totally wild. I mean, first off, you come out of college, you're looking to be maybe an attorney or something along that line. You end up going to the Air Force. You thought you were going to be a pilot. You go ICBM. I mean, this is like your whole world is not what you thought it was going. Somebody redefined your world for you, Kurt.
Right. And that's life, right? That's how it works. The more we plan, the less the road kind of pans out. At least in my life, that's how it's been, and that's a valuable lesson as well. But yeah, it was interesting looking back on things. Obviously, FBI's been in the news a lot just for whatever over the last few years, but it was an interesting experience for sure.
And after that, what did you end up doing?
I really the time in DC just sort of like rattled my patriotism a bit. Pardon me. I don't know if you guys have ever spent time there, but it's a bit of a soul-sucking city. And I just didn't. I wanted to be away from the government. I was over it. I was like, I did my thing. Let's get out. Let's get on with life. Like I just want to go somewhere and start a life. My sister had moved to Houston. My friend, our mutual friend, lived in Houston. A lot of my college friends lived in Houston. So it was just a natural figure something out and get down there, and then I'll figure out whatever's next. And so that's what I was trying to do.
So what happened when you got out there?
So I started, I was actually consulting, one of my buddies on my team was an ex-Army officer. He had actually gone back into the reserves, but he was active duty. And a lot of us, the cool thing about that consulting gig was like, it was almost like a bunch of ex-military guys that had no idea what the hell they were doing there and where they were going. And it was good because we got to like go through that together. So one of my, he's become a good friend of mine, started talking to me about how to make money in Houston and got me connected with these guys. And I kind of interviewed, and I actually told this guy, so I had never really interviewed for a job at this point. Like I was given a job because they wanted my security clearance out of the military. But I have to be, or was probably one of the worst like consultants ever. I had no experience, no nothing. Of course I work hard, but I mean, it helps to know something too, So I talked to one of my buddies that's the Army guy, and he says, let me just introduce you to these people and get you an interview. So he gets me an interview, and I start talking to this guy, and again, like I'm fish out of water. Like this is my first, I've been out like 4 years or something like that, and I'm really on my first interview, and I hadn't prepared. I didn't know like how to close an interview or ask for next steps or any of that stuff, right? So I call this guy and I talk to him and I have a good conversation with him, and then I just like hung up with him, and I called my buddy and he goes, "Did you ask for the next interview?" And I was like, "Not really, no." Okay, so where'd you leave it? And I was like, "I don't know. I just told him like I was interested and to call me back or whatever." And he's like, "Dude," he's like, "you totally screwed up." He's like, you gotta figure something out, like call him back or something. So I call this guy back, and in the meantime, I just booked a ticket on Southwest, like down to see him. So I call this guy up and I go, "Hey, look, I just totally flubbed that interview. I want you to know that. I recognize that. I think that you probably feel that as well, even if you don't want to tell me right now, but I'm going to be down there in a week. I just got a plane ticket to come and see you. Let me just sit with you in your office and talk to you about why I think I'm good for your business," right? And the dude like said nothing back to me and was like, "Okay, so next week." I said, "Yeah, I got a plane ticket. Like I'm going to be there. I'll wait outside your office, man." And he goes, "I like it. Come see me." And so he set up an interview with me, and that was kind of like my first lesson in, I have to do this myself. Like I am going to have to claw my way through life. It's not just going to be, here's your next rank, here's your next assignment, here's what you need to do now. It's going to be me like hustling.
Well, that's kind of the takeaway from people that get out of the military is that ladder, that pipeline isn't there for you anymore. That support, that example of people moving up and you being able to emulate them or something. Now I felt the same way. That's why I leaned on Rob when I got out, was like, how do I do this? How do I get out successfully, and what are the steps? And I could imagine in that time frame there wasn't a bunch of people that were exiting the military at that time. That was mid global war on terrorism. So it was kind of fresh in the space of getting these veterans out there.
Not just to mention, you are from a very specific, like you said, very limited skill.
Yeah, I had zero transferable skills.
But which is great that this is a great topic because there are probably more people that listen to this podcast that are from the community in the space that those MOSs, those skills don't necessarily transfer to the public sector. So they end up going to work for the government. They end up doing private contract jobs and all those types of things because it feels more comfortable. What you did is said, I'd like to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But then also you recognized your value, and you wanted to course correct possibly, I'm guessing, from what previously you felt like maybe the Air Force took you away from, or the transitional opportunity didn't present you with. So let me course correct, put it on the right path.
Yeah, man. I had to, for me, it was like, I had to just jump in the water, and figure out what I was going to do. And I think it's interesting because when you do that, you sort of start building that armor, that I can do this, I can do this. I mean, to this day, I'm in my own opinion, I have a lot to accomplish in my life. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started in a lot of ways because of, sort of my path and what I've learned and so what I think are my gifts to help other people. I was telling you about my friend who just retired. We were sitting around the table late at night, and there was a couple of us left. It was the three that ended up going to Minot. The three of us were sitting there, and I just looked at him and I told him, man, at some point, you're gonna walk into a new thing, and you're not gonna have that rank on your shoulders anymore. But the most important thing you can remember is that you are still a leader. You have to still be a leader. Like the other MOSs that you're talking about, your value is not specifically what you did. It is your courage, your ability to lead, your ability to follow people, right? I mean, we talk about leadership all the time, but I'm a leader now, or have been a leader, and I can tell you what makes teams really good, that's just important as good leadership, is good followership, right? How that team really uses its strengths to accomplish the next thing or reach new heights. I mean, that's what it's all about to me. So,
well, I would agree, but I think that it takes an individual who has the ability to inspire others, right? Who has a vision where individuals can see that, who's genuine, trustworthy, trust them, the subordinates in that process. I think these were things that you learned along the way, either through your own mistakes or things you witnessed, working with individuals that maybe weren't great leaders.
Right.
Because I can tell you from my own personal experience, it wasn't that great. But you took all of that, and let's face it, you've been highly successful in the private sector. I mean, your position now is of a very high position within an organization where you do have that ability to set the tone and inspire and motivate and lead others. But you're hitting on a very important factor that I think a lot of people, when they do transition, miss out on. They feel like, I've got to keep going in the direction that I was already on the path in. And I think what you're stating is listen, get out of your comfort zone, go back and find your center. And sometimes you've got to define your own destiny. That if you allow somebody else to define it for you, it might be something entirely different, as it was in your case from the very beginning. So I think that's a great message.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of shtick early on in my career, when I would talk about new opportunities with people, was always, look, if I can learn how to launch a nuclear weapon in 90 days, I can do this job. I can learn your business, right? And I think we sometimes forget what we did, because this isn't just about me learning ICBMs. It could be, any MOS doing whatever it is that they do. They tend to forget about, like, the small percentage of people who actually do what they do. It's a very small, it feels like when you're in it that, it's huge and there's so many people, but in the grand scheme of things, if you go and talk to the average person, like, they haven't done any of this stuff. And I think sometimes it just takes people realizing and honestly, appreciating what you've done. I think a lot of times in the military, we're just so beat up about what we have to do that we don't almost like give ourselves credit for what we've done. I mean, it's one thing to be humble and modest. That's a value that I say that's sacred to me. But that's more of like an external thing. Like, it took me a long time to acknowledge that since I even kind of do it here, like, it's not a big deal. Other people think it's a big deal. All right, well, I'm down with that, but I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for what we've done. And then,
what industry are you in now?
I'm in healthcare now.
See, that's totally different than launching
but
ICBMs.
You know what, Rob? I'm in leadership.
Yes.
I'm in a place where I inspire people. I'm in a place where I get to take care of people. That's really what I'm doing, right?
Those soft skills that you learn the leadership skills.
Totally.
It might be,
from bad leaders, from good leaders.
Putting a rocket in the air, or it could be getting a product out or completing a project or whatever it is. And that leadership will translate. That's one thing that we've kind of noticed throughout this journey for Mentors for Military is leadership translates. Good leadership translates. Bad leadership will carry over as well.
It will. But I feel like there's always an opportunity for somebody to turn it around. It always bothered me. I feel like I've had a lot of bad leaders. We probably all have, and I'm not necessarily saying in the military, but just in corporate after that. Just an attitude of, sort of like me first. Me first. Is this good for me? If it's good for me, then it's something that we'll do, right? And I feel like what all these military veterans have to offer is that you did something for the good of something else. That is what you specialized in. So bring it into the business world, because the business world is thirsty for something like that. I mean, it's just, we've sort of strayed in the business world from, serving a bigger purpose and a better cause, a just cause. It's been what's good for me, what's good for me, what's good for my career, what's good for, this, layoffs and, this, that, and the other thing. And I just think that the business world is hungry for people that want to do the right thing, be good leaders and sacrifice and, stand up for people and represent people. Be a lead, by example.
I'll give you
living what you're trying to preach and stuff like that.
Sorry, I'll give you a simple, and I know you probably already know this, but for those who are listening or watching, I'll give you a simple percentage to kind of emphasize that of how we're very much in the military mission oriented. We know exactly how to set out. We know the strategy and the vision. We set out the plan. We make sure that we have everything laid out to execute on it. We have contingencies built in, all of those types of things. 85%. 80 to 85, depending upon what white paper you read, of companies fail to execute their strategy. That is an actual factual number. And so when you think about that, that's because there's been poor communication. People don't understand the vision and the strategy. They don't understand the objectives. They don't understand the key performance indicators in order to get you there. They don't understand how to develop a plan. They don't know how to execute that plan clearly because they don't have all those front-end elements of it. That's kind of what you're describing too, is that you're taking not just the soft skills of leadership and everything else, but in some relation, either as an enlisted soldier or as an officer, as you move through the ranks, you begin to carry these skill sets with you that do translate in what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, and to your point about, the strategy not being executed or coming up short or whatever, every industry is essentially the same. They just sell different products, right? But ultimately what you're doing as a leader is making people better. That's my business, right? Doesn't matter if it's healthcare or I left healthcare tomorrow and did some completely new industry, right? When you're every business depends on its people. Your job is to take care of those people, make those people better. And I mean, you can look at the stats behind the different companies that have tried that. They've all done really well.
I want to switch gears real quick. Because of your former OMS, I just want to kind of bounce back to that into terms of current events. recently everybody knows that we had those, balloons that came from China that floated across America and everything. From your past experience and what everybody was putting out there, the doom and gloom, the conspiracy, all that kind of. Do we have anything to be worried about of what they were doing and taking photographs? And is it as severe as we say? In your opinion, obviously, this is just your opinion.
And this is just my opinion. I don't think so. I did talk to some folks just to kind of formulate a better opinion. You can go on Google right now and look up in North Dakota, and you'll see some things up there. It's like, I don't know is the right answer, but I don't think that's a big deal.
If you're not as concerned about it, having been there, then I
think it's weird.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I definitely am with you on that, but I mean, just from a very tactical perspective, I think at best it's just,
You get the same image they can pull off of Google
testing some things, or maybe our detection systems and stuff like that. But
it's very interesting that you say that, because I think people have actually pointed out that this was not the first series, that there have been others. They have not been highly as reported, but they were in the past and all of that. So I tend to think that at times that there are tests that do occur like you're describing. Let's go ahead and see what happens out there, what we can gain in terms of information. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I thought, because of your career field, what it was that you did within the Air Force, if anybody was alarmed and concerned by this, it probably would have been that small nucleus of people that you described earlier that did this function. They would have said, "Whew, this is not good."
Yeah, I mean, we would encounter like protesters on our missile sites and wild stuff, like way in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. And when I say in the middle of nowhere, like Minot, North Dakota is in the middle of nowhere. Great city, by the way. So if anybody's up there listening, I do not want to say anything negative about that town, because it's full of just salt of the earth people. And there's a huge military base there, and a lot of the folks end up sticking around there. But who knows? Who knows what the objective there was? I don't know that it was specifically targeted at maybe our ICBMs or anything like that.
Okay.
I would doubt that.
Because they flew all the way across,
Right.
it does seem odd that they, I hear what you're saying. Getting back to the transition and all of that, I mean, you mentioned that you're in healthcare. I mentioned that you're highly successful in the role in which you play within an organization. What advice would you give, the primary advice that you give to those who are separating from the service, whether or not they have those, like in your case, you didn't have those transferable skills and stuff in terms of military or occupational specialty, but you had those soft skills and everything else. But even for those that do, what have you found to be the most challenging, and what was it that you saw within yourself that you needed to make the change?
I have been sort of telling myself in my own head that I will be successful and I will sort of have this type of career trajectory. If I'm being honest, that's been my story to myself. I lead with that, which is probably kind of a weird answer, but I started working with a life coach, and she like really helped me pull this stuff out and put it on paper. And when I started doing that, I also coincidentally like quit drinking almost 4 years ago, and really started taking care of myself. The plan started to make sense to me. Like all the things that I've sort of, you go through life and it's like you're wearing a tool belt, right? And you're sticking tools in it along the way, but you don't really know, what am I building, right? I don't know what's the job, right? And so for me, it was starting to put those things on paper and actually have a plan, like understand myself, understand my value, and then apply that to whatever game of the day is in front of me. I mean, I would just encourage those folks to, use resources like that. I'm not saying you have to go out and get a life coach tomorrow, but certainly if you can, I would. And I think that helps tremendously. But understanding yourself is the biggest piece of that puzzle that I think you miss, because you think about what I did and how that transfers and who I know and all these things. But like at the end of the day, or at the tip of that spear, you have to compel someone to believe in you. And when you start talking about that story, that's a different story than what you did and how many medals you have and all that stuff. In fact, I would say if somebody's trying to pick you up for only those things, I don't know that I want to like give myself to that person. Like they're not getting the value of me if they're just taking, like they're looking at my tool belt like, oh yeah, you've got that. Yeah, we need that. Bring those 2 tools in here. Well, when you're done with the tool,
Yeah.
right? You quit using it. Project's over. You're done. I don't have any use for you. So that's not my story. That's not what I would tell someone to sell to somebody.
What's your favorite book or the thing that's probably influenced you since you came out?
I ran across a book called The Art of Exceptional Living that I think it's still one of the best, and I would recommend reading it on audio because you pick up some Jim Rohn voice in there and some actual his voice, some of his seminars. The Art of Exceptional Living is one of my absolute favorite books. And I also think there's a book, Simon Sinek has wrote a ton of leadership books, culture books, Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, The Infinite Game. I feel like he's onto something. I've lived in both worlds that he talks about, kind of the profits over people versus, people first mentality. I think those books we should all read them and bring those to the world, because I think that's what we can do as veterans. And
I think what you've mentioned here, the first part of this whole thing was like an amazing segment talking about a career field that I don't think very many of us even understand or know about, quite frankly.
When you say it, and I feel like me and you know a little bit about the military, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
were what?
Yeah.
Well, and again, I know what I know from the movies.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you kind of at least shedding a little bit of light of what you're allowed to do, and then your personal perspective in terms of the confidence of, things. And, that's an important, aspect to everything that's going on at the moment. But the leadership and the transition piece, I think, are key takeaways throughout this episode, because at some point we're going to take off that uniform.
Yeah.
At some point we're going to go out here to the private sector and have to demonstrate our value back to some organization. And if you don't know what that elevator speech is, you don't know who you are individually, it's easy then to fall into what you're currently doing and feel the comfort there. But what we're saying maybe is perhaps think about getting out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, read some of these amazing books that you're describing there where it gets back into the personal, find a life coach, do those types of things that really set you on a different path. And for that, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all that knowledge.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Kurt.
Love hearing from you.